It's July 2nd, 2024, and I'm with John Jeckovich. We're at segment 2 today. We're going to start reading his chapter 6 of his book entitled Their Mother's Sons, and this one is Home on Furlough, Farewell to Anne. Mr. Jeckovich at this time is still a teenager. He's been to several 4 or 5 basic trainings in the Southeast, and before they get ready to send him overseas in combat, they're going to give him a 15-day furlough. So this is where we begin, his 15-day furlough. I recollected how I walked down the same alley in what seemed to be another lifetime, but in reality it was only a few short months ago. Nothing had changed, but in my desperation to overtake my change, I had failed completely. The realization of my failure was brought home to me most vividly in a stark reality of my returning home. There was no one home. I suspected Mother would still be working, and Sally was somewhere around in the vicinity. The back door was locked, and the key was found in a milk box besides the door. That milk box you had besides your door at 3063 Orleans Avenue, do you go back as far as to remembering horse and wagon delivering your milk?
Yeah, the horse that brought the milk, yeah.
You go back that far to recall that?
Yeah, with that milk box.
That's very interesting, extremely interesting.
And after that, they put the milk on the porch, bottled milk on the porch. They were supposed to pick it up within a couple of minutes.
Do you remember the name of the milk company?
Bazzelli.
Oh, wow. Okay. I opened the basement door and peered down the stairway, but it did not go down. Instead, I reached for the key to the kitchen, which was above the trim molding of the door, unlocked the door, and entered the kitchen. Standing in the middle of the kitchen, I was dismayed at the thought that I had once lived here. In a short few months, I've completely disassociated myself with the emotional attachment I once felt here. I was thoroughly alienated from every aspect of it, and I knew this was no longer or would never again be my home. I almost felt utter repugnance as I walked through the house. This revulsion was not much directed at the physical appearance of the surroundings, but more at the emotional sensitivity it triggered off into me. Here in the living room where the most bickering and fighting took place, the physical blows as well as the emotional skirmishes. The silence that endured in here when no one would speak to one another for weeks, only to be broken more by discord and antagonism. The kitchen where we would take turns eating, never as a family group, but as a select factions, paired out the emotional affiliation and submissiveness. It was here that I would attempt to calm down and console the various warring factions into my family unit through my humble and docile undertaking at cooking and baking. Needless to say, there always would fail, but I would keep on trying. As I walked into the 2 modest bedrooms, first my mother's, then ours, I noted nothing had really changed. It was here in the bedroom we would all huddle in desperation, seeking solace and protection for the night, hoping that our sleep would not be broken up by some new onslaught of conflict. I would never associate my mother's bedroom as my mother's bedroom. It was always my father's bedroom, as he occupied it solely by himself most of the time. I recall that I would never enter it, even when he was not at home, but avoided it as some privileged sanctuary for my father alone. Here in this house was a secret still unlocked of why I could not release myself from its bondage and make a life with Anne. It seems strange to say the name of Anne here, as it would never be mentioned, as it did not exist. I could never, in the wildest imagination, thinking of bringing Anne into this environment. It was unthinkable as well as untenable. There were thoughts of its happening made me shudder in disbelief and misgiving. I could no more bring her here than I could have be with her eventual night when she was weakened. Through love of me, I intervened, and I would not let her fulfill her loving desire. Again, as I walked to the house of my unconscious emotions, we were let loose in a torrent of despair and anguish. Yes, here was the reason I'd come back alone. Alone in my thoughts, not wishing to share them again with someone I had known and loved. I did not want Anne to be a part of this, to feel the pain and dejection and a subtle deception. I wanted a new beginning, and I hoped in time our love would overcome my feelings of despair and despondency. Despondency. I went down the cellar stairs, and strangely, the thought of the basement and the furnace as being my only friends in the house eluded me. It was only when I saw my initials burned into one of the rafters above the furnace that I thought returned to me. I had not thought of the basement and furnace for the longest time, and as a matter of fact, I looked upon it now as some frivolous, childish preoccupation. I looked about the basement, and once again, the fur was gone. There was nothing I wanted down here. I did check the furnace to see if it had come through the previous winter. There were dried up ashes in the grates, and the ash pit was almost full. Despondently, I walked back upstairs, and I wondered how I was going to get through the next 12 days. I seriously thought of telling my mother and Sally that I was home for a week and then going back to camp early. I thought at this time it was an excellent idea. I would not commit myself to a positive date until I had been here for several days. I felt better as I developed the plan of the shortened furlough. It would help me relieve some of my discomfort I've caused for Anne. I would have a longer time with Anne and what I wanted to do all along. A feeling of joy overtook me in the belief that I solved part of the immediate problem. It was at the precise moment that my sister walked in the kitchen. She mistook the joy and happiness she saw on my face for a display of affection on seeing her once again. I hugged her and remarked that she had grown taller and older looking. She replied I looked great and I appeared different. I laughingly told her it was the uniform. We talked a while and I asked her when Mother got off of work. She said at 16:30 hours, and usually she got a ride from a co-worker. I asked if I should meet her with the car, but Sally informed me that they did not have a car any longer. Sally told me she had promised a friend that she would be at her house to visit and plan some future events for school. I told her by all means to go, and I would sit around and wait for Mother. As she quickly made a dash for the kitchen door, she turned abruptly and said that she was glad I was home and she had missed me. I smiled at her as she left the kitchen and closed the door. I thought how nothing had changed. A few months ago, I would have experienced this affront and not thought anything of it. Now I envisioned a totally different perspective of myself, and the experience I had just received only reinforced that reality. I then decided I would cut my furlough short and join Ann for the remainder of it. I ran on the timing of it and came to the conclusion I would leave here Sunday and arrive in Owensboro on Tuesday evening. I had to confirm train reservations, and I would arrive in Owensboro Tuesday evening. I had to confirm the train reservations, and I would do that the first thing tomorrow morning. I also would call Ann and tell her the good news. That presented a problem, as I did not want to call her from here and I did not have a car. I would work something out. As I concluded, even though I had made the intention long ago not to say anything to my mother and sister about going overseas, most certainly not to mention Ann. I felt good in it that I had finally done something constructive as far as Ann and I were concerned. I then realized I was decidedly hungry and I have not eaten all day. It seemed strange peering into a refrigerator as I've not had one for several months. I found some meatloaf wrapped in foil, made myself a sandwich, and had a glass of milk. As I was cleaning up after eating, I heard a car door slam shut out front. It was Mother. She was surprised to see me and wanted to know how long I had been here for. She hugged and kissed me on the cheek and said I looked different in my uniform. She asked me how long I was staying. I replied I had to leave early Sunday. She did not appear disappointed at the news, but only said that she was working all week and would give me a list of things to do around the house while no one was home during the day. So her second sentence was, by your mother, she'll give you a list of things to do.
Yeah.
Okay. She also mentioned that Steve was stationed in Fort Belvoir in North Carolina, and he had been home several times. He had visited with Jimmy Duncan, Ralph Ingstrom, and former Scoutmaster Mr. Reynolds. Looky says he was still in the Coast Guard, stationed in California, and not been home at all. Mother then opened the refrigerator and remarked that someone had taken part of the meatloaf. I quickly stated I had. She seemed peeved somewhat, and I said it was supposed to be for supper. She said it was supposed to be supper. I said nothing and walked in the living room, knowing I had the right decision in leaving early. It was starting all over again. I once again, in the midst of it all, was thankful that my brothers were not home. I did not know what to do with myself. I felt so alienated, so out of touch with everything. I had been home only a short time, and within 5 minutes of seeing my mother, I had managed to aggravate her. I walked to the front window and looked out, hoping I would see something out there to distract me from my frustrating thoughts. I could hear Mother rattling dishes and pots in the kitchen, and I certainly knew what that meant. Mother was angry. I did not go in the kitchen, but instead went out the front door, porch steps, and around the side of the house. I walked to the garage. I walked to the garage, which was behind the house, and slid open the door. There was nothing of significance on the garage. Boy, I'm losing my thought. No car, just, here we go. No car, just things I had placed around the outside before I left. A lawnmower rusting out, a wheelbarrow, some garden tools, an assortment of cardboard boxes becoming mildewed and resting on the garage floor, an old red wagon which used to carry vegetables from the city market. It all looked forlorn. I had been accustomed to the neatness and preventive maintenance in the Army. At the sight of all this clarifying manifested itself, I stood in the middle of the garage, not knowing what to do next. The only thing I could think of was several times we had slept in the Packard and parked in the garage, and how I felt going to school the next morning. I told myself that this was nonsense, bringing up these ridiculous memories. I closed the garage door and went back into the house. Sally was back at home and was talking to Mother in the bedroom. I went into the living room and sat down, feeling like I wanted a hot shower and a change of clothes. A short while later, Sally came in the room and sat down in a chair opposite me. She stated that after we had a little something to eat, she and Mother were going to the movies. Okay. Oh, boy. What do I say? You get home, you greet your sister, she's got prior appointments, so she leaves. And then you're sitting, waiting, and you're starving. You had yesterday's little piece of meatloaf in the refrigerator, and you weren't accustomed to seeing refrigerators, because that's not how it works in the Army. And then your mother comes in, and she greets you, and she says you look different in a uniform. But then she says, "Who ate some of the meatloaf?"
What?
Your mother said, "Who ate some of the meatloaf?" So you went into the living room, and you heard Mother rattling the pans, kind of smacking them down because she's angry. You said that's what your mother does when she's angry. And you haven't been home for like probably 2 hours by now. And then your mother puts together some type of dinner, and right after dinner, your mother says to your sister, which is younger than you, they're going to the movies. And so that was your welcome home.
Yeah, welcome home.
Welcome home. Did you want to add anything to that?
John?
To me?
Yeah. You want to add anything to that? Your first couple hours home didn't go too well.
Well, I expected that.
Why didn't you go to the movies with them?
Huh?
Why didn't you go to the movies with them?
No, I wanted to stick around the house, see what was going on in the house, down the basement, check things out. Now, right away they had to go to the movies, though, huh?
Yeah. Okay, here's the rest of it. She stated that after we had a little something to eat, that her and Mother were going to the movies. She further reiterated that Mother was collecting dish sets.
They're missing what?
Collecting dishes that the movies gave out each time.
Oh,
they had a visit.
yeah. Tuesday, yeah.
And that she did not want to miss this particular piece. I said that was fine. I would do the dishes if they're running late. We sat down at the kitchen table, ate the remainder of the meatloaf, some mashed potatoes and green beans. Mother said that she would have fixed something better if she'd known that I was coming, but since she worked all day, that was the best she could do. I smiled and said that was delicious and that it suited me just fine. Minutes later, they were out the door in a rush. The movie would start in half an hour, and they had to walk to the theater. After they had left, I did the supper dishes and tidied up the kitchen. I also found some of my old civilian clothes, and before I changed into them, I took a cold bath. I did not think it would be appropriate to fire up the small stove, which heated the water. So in order to get hot water, you had to heat up a stove.
And still up downstairs until the stairs.
Under what, the basement stairs?
Yeah, basement stairs. At the foot of the stairs in the cellar was a stove, that little stove.
Every time you had to take a hot bath, you had to heat that thing up.
Anytime you washed clothes, anytime you wanted hot water, you had to heat that stove.
And what was it fueled by?
Fueled by, started with wood and then coal.
Wasn't that dangerous?
No.
No. Under the stairs?
It was better, that was better than the chimney.
Okay. Besides, I did not think there was enough cut-up dry wood available for this little stove. While I was in the basement, I noticed the wood pile was down considerably. That would probably be my first chore. I thought about the days I left before returning to Owensboro, how it would fill my time. Surely Mother would have enough for me to do around the house. I was also giving some thought on how and where I'd contact Ann. It would have to be after 2100 hours. Things were much simpler at camp. I did not have to plan and micromanage each deliberate move as I was doing now. I felt as each activity or function I made was being calculated and acting upon, that I was being constantly scrutinized. I sat in the living room for the longest time and did I not even turn on the radio, but instead listened to the subtle noises the house made. The whirling of a refrigerator fan reminded me of my own thoughts, gyrating and spinning about my head. Thoughts such as why I had come back to all this. It was only a short period of 7 months ago that I was hesitant and forlorn about leaving. Now oblivious feeling manifested themselves. In a quick change, I made into my civilian clothes. It seemed that I was caught up in the middle of two separate persons, by vying to overpower me in their orbit of rationalization. Minutes?
Yeah.
7.
It was not until as if I was helpless in my frustrations, but I felt a deep sense of guilt as well as feelings of desperation. Guilt that I was directly responsible for my mother's and sister's present condition. It was I, after all, who was accountable for my father's death, as my mother reiterated to me so many times. And it was I who left them for the army and fend for themselves. Somehow I felt answerable for these deeds, and I did not know how to absolve them. Well, let's take the second point first. Were you drafted into the Army?
Drafted?
Were you drafted
Yeah.
in the Army? You had no choice. You had
No, I didn't enlist, no.
You were drafted into the Army, correct?
Yeah.
You had no choice. Let me ask you, why didn't you enlist? Why'd you wait to be drafted?
Well, because I wanted to be home along part of the time I could.
Okay, that's a good answer.
If I had enlisted, I would leave her all alone. But
So
if they drafted me, I had no choice.
You had no choice. Okay, that's the second part. The first part is your mother says that you were responsible for your father's death.
Yeah.
Well, your father died of a heart attack. You had no way.
Well, that's because I wasn't with him that day, that night.
It wouldn't have made a bit of difference. Your father was a hard-working man, 43 years old, and he had a heart attack. It's just that simple. You with him, or 10 people with him, helping him put the cement would have made the difference in the world. I cannot believe your mother and your sister would hang that over your head. It was so foolish. So foolish. All right, let's keep on reading now. I also felt a sense of desperation that I would lose Ann forever. I had gone a long way toward the end and coming home on furlough rather than being with her. If I loved her as much as I professed to, then why was I here instead of with her? Suddenly the thought must have crossed my mind. What most she think of my decision to leave her? I looked at the books and periodicals that I had accumulated in my young life, still stored in a bookcase I had built in grade school. The writings of Tolstoy, Freud, Shaw, H.G. Wells, and others did not seem that comforting and enlightening with the dilemma I was facing. I finally came to the firm conclusion that,
I just wondering
minute?
what he was thinking about that. 4 minutes?
wanted to be with Ann, and that I had to learn to live with my feelings and guilt and frustration. Just then, Mother and Sally arrived back from the movie.
What movie did they go see, John?
You remember what movie they went to see?
I don't know.
Just then,
Mrs. Miniver or some stupid thing.
that was like a female's movie, like a girl's
Yeah.
movie, okay. Just then, Mother and Sally arrived back from the movie. They both showed me the dish they had received for attending tonight's movie. I smiled approvingly and asked them how the movie was. Instead, Mother asked me where I was going to sleep tonight. Why is she asking you? She should be telling you, this is your room, this is your bedroom. Yeah, where am I going to sleep tonight? That's strange. The thought of where I was to sleep at any given night never crossed my mind, since I assured of a place in the Army, be it a bunk, barracks, or sleeping bag or out in the woods. Mother quickly answered her own question by remarking that rather than disturb Sally's sleeping arrangement, and since I was only going to be here for a short while, it was only logical that I sleep on the couch in the living room.
Yeah, logical, yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. I agreed and said that would be fine, but I wondered where Steve slept when he was here. Imagine a fuss was made on his behalf that he took it as a matter of course, something that was expected and completely assured. Mother came back momentarily with a wrinkled sheet and a small knitted comforter, saying, I should use one of these pillows from the couch if I needed something for my head. If you need something for your head, there's this old pillow on the couch. Go ahead and use it.
Yeah.
Minutes?
2.
She also stated it was getting late and they both had to get up early the next morning for work. In school. She said good night, turned and went into her bedroom, my father's bedroom, closed the door. Sally came in the room shortly and said good night, and she too left for her bedroom. I felt ostracized and rejected here. I have not been home in several months from the military, and no one asked me anything about it or where I was going. I got the distinct impression that I have done something heinous and objectionable and was being punished for it.
Oh, boy.
The objectionable was being in the Army and leaving once again.
Yeah.
Minutes?
1 minute left?
The next morning I was awakened by the noise Mother was making in the kitchen. I did not get up. I was sleeping. Shortly thereafter, Sally joined in the kitchen. As she had breakfast, they chatted about last night's movie and what a great movie it was. Mother then went outside, presumably to wait for a ride and go to work. Sally went back into her bedroom to get some schoolwork ready. I then got up, put my slacks on, and went into the bathroom. I no sooner closed the door when Sally began knocking on it, telling me to hurry up or she'd be late for school.
Oh, boy. Hurry up, she'll be late for
Minutes?
school. 28 seconds.
It was only 7:30 hours and the house was empty again.
So let's just wrap it up.
I opened the refrigerator, it was empty. A couple drops of orange juice in a milk bottle, no milk, and a fruit of any kind. I closed the refrigerator door and went into the bathroom to shave. Wrap it up. Give me the thing.
I don't have